due to one, a grant we got from the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making and the Administrative for Community Living, along with a secondary grant from the United Way of Mid-Willamette Valley over by Salem. So, oh, my arrow didn't work. Next. All right. So that's my introduction. I'm going to get to my why, and Jenny already went over questions. So one other thing I like to tell people before I get started is that I am not an attorney. I am a professional guardian and work within the field of guardianship. And I work within and inform people about supported decision making, but I'm not an attorney, so I cannot give legal advice. I say this because guardianship sometimes does get brought up and is a legal process. So wanting to make sure people are aware of that. One thing real quick before I get into my why is just to give you a little bit of information about the ARC of Oregon. So the ARC of Oregon serves and supports individuals who experience developmental disability and their families throughout Oregon. Our three main programs are one, the GAPS program, which is what I work under. We are guardian for just over 60 adults throughout the state who experience developmental disability, and have a few we support out in the Bend area. So I occasionally head out there, or one of my team does, so that we can see the folks we support and make sure they're getting what they need. We also work within advocacy and future planning, so helping families plan for the future, particularly maybe when mom and dad are no longer able to care for their loved one who has a disability. We also manage the Oregon Special Needs Trust. This is a pooled trust where people with disabilities can save their money and put it into trust so that they can save money but not lose their eligibility for services and Social Security. And then we recently, about 3 years ago, took on the Oregon Training and Consultation program. And this is training and consultation mostly for professionals within the field of disability. And right now they're doing a lot of work with the individual support plan and trainings around that. So that is the ARC Oregon. And then my why. This is my why. These are my two daughters, both of whom experience disability in different ways, and both of whom are part of the reason I'm in this field and spreading information and hoping and helping parents make informed choices, particularly around turning 18 and supports for adulthood. So my oldest one there on the left is Leah, and obviously enjoys horses and I think would live in the horse barn if she could, and they're very therapeutic for her. And then my youngest daughter there on the right, in that picture, just found out that we were meeting her teacher for lunch at McDonald's after, this was pre-COVID, but after not seeing her most of the summer, was quite excited. She is too, also excited now because high school starts next year and she only has 2 more sleeps until she's 14. So things are big at our house right now about that. All right, so jumping into our learning objectives for today. 1, I want you to leave understanding the values and principles of supported decision making. Sometimes this is quite a shift in how we think about supporting people and how we look at supporting our children. As parents, we've made a lot of the decisions for them, and we try and we support them to make their own, but it is a shift sometimes. I'm also going to go over some tools that you could use to work with your child. Sorry, this says adult child. I reused some slides and didn't get that edit. But this can be with children under 18 too. Tools to work with your child to establish supported decision-making supports. So there'll be some concrete tools towards the end instead of just theory, which I, as a parent, always find helpful. I want things I can take away and hold and look at again, and a checklist. And then we're just going to go over what the basics of what's called a supported decision-making agreement look like. There are some templates out there people could use, but you can also create your own. So we're just going to go over what those basic components are. So as we get started, And I know you don't want to listen to my voice the entire time, so we're going to do a little icebreaker. So if you're able to open your chat, we're going to utilize that for some of this activity. So wanting you to think about an upcoming decision you need to make. It can be a big decision, should I buy the house or trailer? Or it could be a small decision of, should I go get my kids new shoes at Walmart or Kohl's? Something like that. And so if anyone wants to enter that in either chat or questions, and I, knowing so much about you, am going to make the decision for you. So what is your decision you have to meet? I see Lori's read ahead in my questions. Jennifer, should I get a new car? Anyone else? Should I go to the grocery store today or a different day? Oh, Morgan, I'm feeling you right now on that. Or planting my flowers. So let's see. I know you all well. So Jennifer's not going to get the new car. Morgan, go tomorrow. Today's Friday. We don't want to do anything hard today. And then, should I plant my flowers yet? Jenny, you're probably a little late on that one. I think freeze warning's over. And Diana, what to have for dinner? That's easy at my house. It's Friday. Pizza movie night. No thought there. So thinking about that, what kind of feelings have come up for you with someone else who doesn't really know you getting to make those decisions? And or do you think I should have had more information before I made that decision? Jenny, feels like I don't have control, which I believe is what Lori was staying up above. No control. Morgan, definitely should have more info. Yeah, because maybe your fridge is empty and food really does need to come today. But that's something to think about and to get going in our minds and to help you chew on, that it's really hard to give up that control and let others make decisions for us. So as we go forth, supporting our young adult children or teens, really looking for where can we help them have control in that decision making and how can we build that skill so that they can make those decisions, because going on in life, not being able to make decisions for yourself doesn't always feel good. So thank you for participating. It's very hard sometimes to do some of these activities remotely or virtually. So thank you. All right, so now that we have that kind of in mind, that we like control over our decision making and it impacts our emotions and how we move forth, I also want to jump into, what am I doing? One of the things that I like to talk about is, how did we get here? How did we get to a discussion about supported decision making as an alternative to guardianship? Because for many, many years, and history-wise, guardianship was kind of the default and was the one support available. So how are we here now? One thing I like to talk about there is that really disability in itself hasn't changed. So if you look at this couple with Down syndrome has not changed over the course of the last 2 generations in and of itself. However, there was a study done by Biddles and Glasson in 2004 that while Down syndrome itself has not changed, the life expectancy of someone with Down syndrome has increased from 12 years old in the 1940s up until now it's in the 60s. So how did this change occur if Down syndrome is the same? It's been due to, one, changes in medical field and medical supports provided, and familial supports and how we support individuals and how we see individuals with disability. That has gotten us to this place now where a lot of people with disabilities are living older, are becoming adults, and we're seeing the value and contribution our kiddos and other folks with disability can have. And so trying to honor those changes that have gone on. As I said, guardianship was kind of the default for a long time. There weren't alternatives thought about. There wasn't the education our there wasn't the access to education that there is now. There wasn't the access to supports in the home. And there wasn't this focus on self-determination, living a whole life, and high expectations. And that's changed the trajectory for so many people. And so we need to look at a way to support folks that doesn't necessarily include guardianship. I'm not saying guardianship is bad. There are individuals who guardianship is the appropriate support at the adult level, but making sure we explore those alternatives. So that's kind of how we got here. Perceptions change over time, and we've had some big perceptions changes in the past couple generations. The other reason we're all here is the magic fairy dust, I call it, that happens at between 17 and 18. Your kid, when they're 17, is a minor, and parents are getting to make decisions, and parents can help support them in all these areas of life. And then at 18, that transfers, and your child is now an adult, and they have the rights that you and I have that are outlined in the Constitution and can make decisions about their life. And many of us parents, that's kind of scary. How do I support them? Are they going to make the right decisions? How do I help them make those decisions? And so this is a way for you to learn and see if this supported decision making is a way to support your child when they become an adult, to live the life they want and to make decisions. So again, turning 18, now that your child is an adult or when they become one, they get to vote, get to practice religion of their choosing, get to make poor choices and experience those consequences. I think we've all been there in our own lives. We've watched maybe our siblings. Once we turn 18, all of our decisions were not perfect. And I'm sure my parents struggled with some of the decisions I made, and looking at how they supported me and making sure that I came out of those choices fine. Um, they have the right to enter into contracts and to sign for medical care. So again, history, our perception of disability and our perception of the expectations of someone with disability have changed, and turning 18, these are huge reasons of why we need to look at this. So this is kind of just a slide to show that we need to start changing that conversation and focus on how we can support youth with decision making. Decision making is a skill and can be built and can be grown over time and can start at any point in someone's life. So instead of, maybe the conversation of how do I make sure everything goes perfect in their life and I keep them safe and I keep them, sheltered, to where can I help them learn to make decisions and direct their life and work towards the life they want. So that we could all see that smile that was on Jenny's sun face when he was at work that she showed us earlier. One quick thing on research, and then we're going to delve into values and principles. So research, and this is from the National Core Indicators. The next slide has it, I believe 2013. People with a greater sense of self-determination, so that means people with a greater sense of having control over their life and getting to make decisions about their life, tend to experience or have a healthier lifestyle, increased motivation, and better ability to recognize and resist abuse. So sometimes that one's counterintuitive to folks, but if you're taught how to recognize abuse and you're taught to some of those skills around seeing if someone is a good person or bad, you can identify it better. And no, I was wrong. This was the National Resource Center for Support Decision Making, and you can see the reference there. The next one is people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who don't have a guardian are more likely to have a paid job, live independently, and have friends. And this is just a sample, and it's from the National Core Indicators. All right, another quick activity before we delve into some concepts, trying to keep you on your toes and paying attention. In the chat box, please type a decision you make on a daily basis. So brand of cereal to eat, whether to wear jeans or yoga pants, and then maybe type a bigger life decision you've had to make. What to wear and what house to buy. Yes. My decision on what to wear today was made by I was going to be on camera. And if you don't want to type, that's fine. You can just think about it. Oh, we just lost someone. Wanting to think about next, who helped you make these decisions? And what type of help did they provide you? Or with your smaller ones decisions, what helped you make those decisions? Oh, my chat box says comments are closed. Thank you, Lori. I'm hoping Jenny can address that. So since that might not be working for everyone, I will just continue on. Part of this activity was to show people and to get you thinking that when you're making decisions, you usually and sometimes get input from outside just you, whether it's what you're going to wear. Sometimes that's influenced by an app on your phone because you've checked the weather or watching the news, or what house to buy can be influenced by, if you're talking with friends and family, and them sharing with you, well, do you want a bigger yard or smaller yard for playing outside? What about needing a home office because you're working from home? And then you also get supports in like buying a house in terms of a realtor and financing. So that's leading into the idea that everyone uses support. We all use support to make our decisions. We don't do them in isolation usually, and we don't do them alone. What that support looks like differs depending on the decision being made, but usually is there. I'm seeing one in chat. Jenny, yes. Oh, that's to Lori. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out if everyone can see the chat or not, because I'm not sure why some people aren't able to chat.
Well, I think that was my last activity for chat. So maybe those of you who are attending, if you do end up having a question, it looks like Q&A is working. So if you could go there to put Q&A, your questions for later, that would be great. It looks like, Jenny, they can see it, but they can't comment in chat. So
yeah, so let's put questions in the Q&A and I can follow those.
And I will skip my next activity when it comes up. So my apologies, technology is ever changing on us and we think we've got it and then it throws us a curveball. So as I was saying, we all use support for different things. On the slide is a bunch of different ones. And one of them that I like to point out that sometimes we don't realize is support and is actually supported decision-making that you and I use frequently is you can't go online now and purchase anything, it seems, without those 5 little stars telling you the rating and having reviews. That is supported decision-making. You can choose to look at it and read people's reviews and to base your decision on the stars, or you could choose not to. But that's a way kind of that support for making our decisions has been built into part of our society. Just a nice quote that we like to look at. Needing assistance means you're a person. Asking for assistance means you're wise. Jonathan Martinez, who this is from, is an attorney who helped Jenny, I'm blanking her name. She comes up later. The first person,
Jenny Hatch?
Yes, Jenny Hatch. All I could remember is you, Jenny. But he helped Jenny Hatch go from guardianship into supported decision-making as an alternative to guardianship. And I'll talk a little bit more about her later. And he's also part of the National Resource Center for Supported Decision-Making. Another concept within decision making is that there is a support continuum. We all and our kiddos need different support on different subjects, different support in different areas of life, and we can need different support depending on an acute situation that's going on. So looking at support for your child of it can be all the way from minimal, no assistance to they need full assistance. And that is a fluid situation. If you think about my decision making abilities are pretty good right now, running probably on minimal assistance. But should I get a new medical diagnosis? Should I all of a sudden go through something that's very stressful or traumatic? I'll probably need more support. I may need folks to come in and help me more. I may need to have folks tell me, Emily, this is so big, you shouldn't make any major decisions for a while. So looking at what is that support and realizing it can change over time. So the support your child needs at 18 may be different from 26, from 35. And the other part is it's about the right support at the right time. We don't make decisions in a vacuum, as I said, and we don't jump right into things usually with no experience on them. The illustration I like to give here is we usually don't go from having never seen a bike to hopping on a two-wheel bike and riding it. There's usually a couple steps in between, and sometimes you can go back and forth depending on your experiences. Usually you start with a trike, you jump up to the bike with training wheels, you get up to a two-wheeler and you're going well, and maybe you fall off and have a bad accident and you tell mom and dad to put the training wheels back on. Or maybe you do two wheels for a long time and then your balance starts getting off as you age, and so you go back to a trike. But it's what is that right support at the right time? Another part with this too, the right support at the right time, is we all love unsolicited advice and support. I'm being sarcastic. So looking at, and one of the parts that I'll explore more with support decision making is getting that support when you want it. Because it can be very frustrating when someone decides that you need help or you need advice and input when you haven't asked for it or you don't um, want it. All right, so now we've kind of talked about some of the concepts about decision making in general, about how we all need support with decision making, or we all need support in general in life, and that the amount of support we need can fluctuate over time. So next, we're really going to go into those key values and principles specifically to supported decision making, so that we can support people during their lives in a least restrictive way. So the definition of supported decision making is when people receive assistance from one or more trusted friends, family members, or professionals or advocates to help them understand the situations they face and the choices and options they have so they can make their own decisions. So if you think back on some of what we've already talked about, people receive the assistance from one or more trusted friends. We kind of talked at the beginning about big decisions and, maybe who would have helped you and why you chose them. And we usually seek out that help to try and understand our situation, whether it's a medical situation, buying a house, moving, starting a new job. We're really looking for someone to help walk us through, give us some clarity, and then we make our own decision about it. So, with supported decision, the person's right to choose is presumed. This is not an alternative to guardianship or one of the alternatives where someone else makes the decision. This is not surrogate decision making. The person is still in charge of making the final decision on whatever's being discussed. The person, your young adult or child, has full control and involvement. They're looking to the people they want to look at to help them and asking for the type of help they want. And back to that, assistance is available when wanted and needed. So again, trying as parents, I know it's hard to not give the unsolicited advice and to not, jump in. Doesn't mean as a parent we can't have information ready in our back pocket for when they finally ask. It just means waiting to be asked. And then that guardianship is used when it is necessary, and that other alternatives are reviewed and tried prior to guardianship happening. One of those values is also like the person is in charge of making the decision, and that refers to our autonomy. It's the right of a person to make informed decisions about what happened to them. And the reason this has the Statue of Liberty is because autonomy is written into some of our founding documents. It's your individual liberty, goes back to it is your choice and it's your inherent right to make decisions about yourself. So we as parents need to sometimes look and work on how do I build the skills and tools so my child can make decisions to the best of their ability, and can have that autonomy over their life and make those decisions. Making decisions is central to a person's autonomy and essence of what is regarded as personhood. So it's a crucial component in enabling someone to have control over their life and engage in society. That's from the National Resource Center for Support Decision Making. My next slide seems simple, but in conversations I've had with parents and in conversations with professionals, just that remembering that the person is the decision maker. This is not a support where someone else gets to make that decision. And I may repeat that a couple more times as we go on, because as parents, we are so used to making a lot of decisions for our kids. We talk to them, we get their input, but sometimes we still make it. And it's a big brain shift when our child's 18 and we're supporting them to make decisions to still remember it's in their court. And I'm hoping because you're part and you guys interact with Diana and Jenny at CODSN that you've heard about dignity of risk. If you remember back to my slide when we were talking about 18 years old, turning 18, sometimes you get to make choices and suffer and deal with those consequences. Part of that is called dignity of risk, allowing our children to try and possibly fail. And I'm not saying let them try something we know is beyond their scope of skill, but starting small and helping them find success in that. So letting them have that risk is, offering the choice. And also thinking back to part of that risk is sometimes what I feel is a bad decision, someone else might see as good based on their culture, their life experiences, their desires and expectations about their life. And so having to take our feeling as parents out of it a little bit about what we feel is a good or bad decision because it's the one our child is making. So one of my examples on this, because sometimes people can't understand, is if you think about someone who eats a vegan diet and someone on a standard US diet. The vegan may look at the person on the standard diet who eats a steak and be like, that is bad, that is wrong. I can give you all this evidence why I can't believe you're doing that. Whereas for the person who eats the standard American diet, there's nothing inherently good or bad about eating a steak. Letting our children take risks is also a learning opportunity. I still remember way back in elementary school, I've lived in Oregon, Western Oregon all my life. In my mind, in first grade, in Western Oregon, with my limited experience in life, sunny meant warm because sun doesn't come out very often in Western Oregon, except in the middle of summer when it's warm. Well, it was February. I look out the window. It is bright, shiny, sunny. And I do what any other first grader does who has not experienced cold sun. I go to recess without my coat. And I have a teacher, Emily, don't you want to take your coat with you? No, it's sunny out. I'll be great. Luckily, it wasn't below freezing, so wise teacher. I learned my lesson. I learned from that experience, sunny does not mean warm in Oregon, and put it in the back of my brain going forth. So what are those places your kiddo can learn from some of those choices? All right. So we've gone through some of the principles, we've gone through the values, we've talked about basics of decision making. Um, Now we're going to get to that part, like I told you at the beginning, as a parent, that I really enjoy is I like stuff to hold on to when I leave. I like steps I can take, tools that I have been provided. So we're going to start delving into what some of those tools are to help you see if supported decision making is what will work for your youth, and then how to put some of the building blocks in place for supported decision making. So, a little bit earlier, I told you about Jenny Hatch. Jenny Hatch was a young lady who was her own guardian and was doing well living in an apartment and leading her life, and then had a health crisis. And due to the health crisis, needed to have a guardian in place to make medical decisions she was unable to make due to how sick she was. Well, then once she recovered, she wanted to go back to being her own guardian and leading the life she wanted, and was not having success at that, was not being listened to, and was continued to have to be under guardianship. So she worked with Jonathan Martinez, who I talked about earlier, and they went to court, and she won in court the ability to, instead of have a guardian, to use supported decision making to support her going forth. So her guardianship was dissolved, and she used then, and still does use, supported decision making in making decisions about her life and guiding her life. You can find more about her by searching online or going to the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making. So what are those things within supported decision making that, enabled her, that she accessed? So those components, we're going to go through these building blocks like I talked about. We're going to talk about supporters. Who are those people that support someone? We're going to talk about the importance of communication and having documented your child's way of communicating. We're going to talk about the environment and how different environments impact our ability to make decisions, and how we can set up an environment to make it more conducive to making decisions. I'm going to talk about some methods of supporting folks that might be a little out of the box for getting information and understanding so they can make a decision. And then I'm going to get to those tools where it will help you write it all down. So the first one we're going to talk about is, who are these supporters? We're saying supported decision making, but what does that look like? How can you support someone to make the decision? What is that role? So the who of who can be supporters is any person that your child or young adult knows and trusts. It can be family, friends, it could be a caregiver, service coordinator maybe. It could be maybe one of their providers, a therapist, a teacher. Maybe they've had a great coach or a leader in some youth program. So it can be any of those people. The other part of that is it can change based on the decision, and I'll get to that more in a bit. And so it's also someone the person trusts, someone that respects the person's skills and abilities, and honors the person's right to make decisions. It's also someone who knows your child or young adult, so they understand how to support them in making that decision. They understand what environment needs to be present to make the decision. They understand how the person communicates, how the person intakes information, and they understand how to give that person choices. And as I said, the same person doesn't have to do all of it. If you think back again to you and I being supported with making decisions, I have a stepmom who's a retired pediatrician. She's who I rely on for medical questions because that's her skill set. And so she could be my trusted person and my supporter for medical decisions. I can go to her and ask questions. She can find me information. and I trust the information she's giving me because that's what she worked in. Now, if I'm having trouble with taxes or I'm needing support with finances, I go to my dad because he was a certified public accountant, and that's where his expertise is in. So who I look to changes based on the type of decision. That can still happen and does happen within supported decision making. Maybe your youth wants to look to you, mom and dad, for things that involve medical because you've been there with them, you understand what goes on with them medically, um, and you've just always been there for that. But maybe if they're looking at employment and wanting to find a job, maybe they look to their teacher, or if they're associated with Voc Rehab and they look to those other people who that is it. Or maybe they have a peer that has a job and they want to reach out to them for help. So that role of supporter and who it is can change based on those what topic it is under. The next building block is communication. So one important aspect with supported decision making and the person being the decision maker is the person needs to be able to take in information. They need to be able to chew on it and figure out what is important to them, what they want and what they don't, and then they need to be able to relay their decision to somebody else. This is usually one of the building blocks that by the time you get to high school is you know and you've identified. Um, schools are really good with speech language pathologists helping students figure out which method of communication works for them. And we as parents have had many, many years to perfect understanding what our child is saying to us. But we also need to have a way to get that down on paper to relay to somebody else to show how our young one is being supported to make the decision. So within this, there's identifying how your youth best receives information. Some of us, it's verbally, not me. Some of us, it is reading something that's written. For some people, it's watching a video over and over, or it's a social story. So how does the person best receive information? And then identifying how does the person express themselves? Do they express themselves verbally? Do they use augmentative communication? Do they use eye gaze? Do they use one blink for yes, two for no? But how is it that they express themselves? And another important piece to be thinking about in how they express themselves, because this is going to be how they can tell their decision to another, for instance, a medical professional, is if it's verbal, what does that really look like? And by this, I mean, I have a daughter who has a very extended processing time. So if you ask her a question, it can take 30 seconds to 2 minutes to get a response. And that doesn't mean she doesn't understand the question. It doesn't mean she doesn't want to answer it. It means she's working things through from her in her head, and it just takes a minute to get out. It also with her comes out in this. You ask her a question, and if she doesn't know you, she's going to shy away and be quiet. These are things I need to relay to another party who she's going to be making a decision and relaying it to so they understand that this is her typical communication, and they have to listen really well because she talks quiet at that point. If you've identified with any of this that your child needs communication supports, help them access. And as I said, schools, at least in my experience, are very aware of this and very helpful in this and have speech language pathologists and others who can help there. So hopefully you've had that experience for your child if they need assistance with communication. And then learn how the person makes their decisions. So are they someone who makes them quickly? Do they need a pro and cons list? What does it look like for them to take in information, process it and express it and make that decision? So we've talked about the role of supporters, who those people can be, how they can help, how it can change. We've talked about the importance in communication. And now we're going to go on to something that hopefully sounds pretty familiar to you, the decision-making environment. And as I talk about this, many of you may in the back of your mind go, this really sounds like person-centered thinking and some of the stuff I've put on one-page profiles for my child, if you've done the one-page profiles. And it is, because if you think about it, certain things need to be in place so we can make our best decisions. I am a morning person. My decisions come best in the morning. My child is a night owl. Decisions happen at night. She's almost 15. We have literally had to have this conversation about if she wants mom to make a decision, we need to meet in the middle of the day sometime, not at 10 o'clock at night when she gets talkative, because mom's not going to be in a place to make decisions and put true thought into it. But thinking about things before you start helping someone to make a decision of, are they hungry, angry, lonely, tired, thirsty? These are all things that can impact our ability to pay attention and to put thought into making a decision. If you want to just think for a moment, when you have a hard decision to make, when are you looking at doing it? Are you being purposeful for yourself in setting it up? I know sometimes when I'm making a big decision, one, I get up and I'm doing it in the morning. I get myself my cup of coffee. I've had my breakfast. I get out my pen, my paper, and my computer, and I sit down and it's quiet at that point because all the children are still asleep. And that's when I can put some good thought into making sure I understand all the information regarding whatever decision I'm making. You can also see this at play, and if you want to think of a true life example of when a family is in crisis at a hospital and you've gone in as something is happening, if the doctor's coming out to chat with you, they usually, one, for privacy, but two, so that you can hear and pay attention, move you to a separate room where there's maybe more comfortable chairs, there's a box of tissue, there's a door that can close so that it's quiet, and you can have that one time with the doctor and then stay there to chat. That's setting up the environment so that you can put good thought into making that decision. So, what are those things for your young adult? What does that look like for them? Again, my oldest child for decision making would prefer it at 10 o'clock at night with the music blaring. Not going to work for me, but works for her. All right. What are some methods or ways that you as a supporter or you as a parent can help find to help someone, particularly with that intake of information, helping your loved one understand the decision and getting the information they need to make that decision? So I've made up a list of quite a few different options, and I will go through them. It is not exhaustive, and you know your child best. So there may be one on here that you've discovered that works well for them. One that a lot of us do, we chat with other people. What do you think about? What has your experience been on? One way you could help as a supporter is if you don't have that information or that experience and your youth wants to, explore employment, you could help them find someone else to chat with. Help them find someone who's new in the job market who could say what it was like going for the first interview, or connect them with someone maybe you work with that has more experience. So it doesn't always have to be you as the mom or dad or as the supporter doing the chatting. It could be connecting your young one with somebody else who has that experience to chat. Another one is to just observe, to just sit back and watch. So if it's maybe a medical procedure or here again with jobs, that kind of job shadowing where they just go and see what is it that it entails working for Starbucks, to just see, or what is it that it entails to go and work at a warehouse on a factory line or to go work in a beauty salon, just going and observing because they can get oh yeah, this is something I want to do, or oh, this is not what I thought it was. I'm so glad I just came and saw and didn't start a job here. Another slightly different than observing is visiting. I liken this to a lot of times what I've heard. My children are adopted, so this is stories I've heard. But when, you know, a family is about to give birth, the mom and dad or the two parents go and visit the hospital before labor has started to see what elevators they're to use, to see the maternity floor, to see where the nursery is, and to understand the layout so that when anxiety is high and labor is happening, they've been there already, they have a bit of familiarity. So maybe your loved one needs to visit beforehand and see, okay, I go to the dentist, this is the chair that I sit in and wait. Then I go through this door. I think that's something a lot of us as parents have probably already tried and utilized just um, as part of life for our kiddos, but utilizing that too to support decision making so that they understand everything that may happen. A list of questions. This one comes directly from someone that we support through guardianship. Yes, she has a guardian. That doesn't mean we still can't support her to make her own decisions, and that her decisions, we can still honor her decisions. So she was looking at moving and wanted to move. And she is a lady who writes questions, a whole list of them. So she wrote her questions. We took her on the visit to this new group home, and the provider sat down with her and she got to ask all of her questions because that's how she processes information and decides if she wants to do something. This is my question, answer, question, answer. She had 99 questions. No joke. The provider sat down, answered them all. This gave her the information she needed. Okay, I think I can live here. You know, they've answered my questions. And it was more than just the answers. For her, it was also they pay attention to me, they understand me, they don't just shoo me off if I start asking too many questions. And then for us as the guardian, it let us know this is a good match for her. They sat and answered all the questions. They paid attention to her. They valued her input. And so she did end up moving there. Again, pros and cons lists that we've all used that may be effective for your youth. And then video. YouTube is phenomenal. You can search almost anything on there. If your youth is having to make a medical decision about, they've just turned 18 and you've now discovered they have wisdom teeth that need to be pulled, there's videos that they can go and watch and see what the process is and how it works if they take that information in visually and just have to watch and watch and then be like, yeah, I'm good with that. It works. Or, oh, no, that isn't. Also visuals. So maybe not a full video, but a social story or a book or some other visual support. And then again, natural consequences. Back when I was a case manager, we had a gentleman who had passed his test to drive and had had a car historically and then decided he didn't want one, it wasn't working. And every year at his individual support plan meeting kept bringing up, I want a car, I want to drive. I want a car, I want to drive. And so we were working with him and we're like, he's got a driver's license. He has the right to do it. We don't think he has enough money, but he hasn't been listening to us. We can tell him and help him to save and get him set up to do that for success and get the insurance and do the gas. And so we supported him in doing that because it's what he wanted and was focused on. He did it. He got his car. He had it for a while. And then he came back to us a few years later and was like, I'm done with this. This is too expensive. It uses up all my money. I'm going to go back to riding a bike because I live in a small town. And he sold his car and then didn't have those expenses. But there was no harm in letting him try, and it was his right to try. And so we did. And then he came to the choice that it didn't work for him. And so now he's back on his bike. So we've talked about those building blocks. We've talked about the supporter, talked about the right environment, talked about communication style, and some, but not all, different methods to help people get the information they need to make the decision that they're making. Our next step now is to go through a couple tools to start putting it all together and start really identifying where your child may or may not need support in making decisions, and getting it in writing of who's going to help, when, where, and why, and how. So my first tool for you is this tool called the Stop, Look, and Listen tool. This was developed by as part of a grant. We didn't do it. It was the ARC of South Carolina. Sorry, North-South was thinking. The ARC of South Carolina, in conjunction with some school districts working with transition age youth. And so it's very targeted towards transition age youth and identifying the skills they do and don't have in terms of decision making and adult skills about adult life. It also, on the third and fourth page, which I'm not going to show all pages here, identifies how, if you find somewhere on here that your youth has not had the opportunity to learn the skill, or this is something they could do if they had more experience, identifies how to write it into the IEP so it can be a goal they work on at school to increase their skills and decision-making ability. So that's one of the things I really like about this one. And it gets down to literally specific examples based on what's identified in the first part. Yes, Jenny?
Where would we find a copy of this Stop, Look, and Listen tool?
One, you can type Stop, Look, and Listen tool into Google. And two, Jenny, I have the link right here in my PowerPoint. I can put it in chat. Are people able to access that still right now?
Yeah, so I was able to reactivate the chat, and then I
Okay.
could copy the link and put it in an email as follow-up for people.
Okay, well, it's not letting me highlight it right now. But it's
Okay, so we
also,
can send it out after.
yes, it's also on the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making under their resources.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So, yes. But if you look, it identifies and looks into multiple aspects of adult life. For instance, the example here is finances and relationships. So, making a small purchase. I've had the opportunity to learn this and practice it. I've had some, or I haven't had any, and can help you look and identify within finances, where does my youth need some more support and more experience? And then from there, you can work on, how do we build that skill, or how do we support? The same down at relationships of, speaking up if something doesn't feel right, recognizing abuse. Those are skills that can be built up and then help with making those decisions about, what do I do if something doesn't feel right? And then a third, there's more going on, but there's also education. So it has it divided into life areas for you. And like I said, then it's very clear directions on the follow-up pages about how it could be entered in an IEP, or you could also look at putting it in the individual support plan, having a personal support worker or direct support professional work with your child on it, or you as parents. Another kind of tool, and this I would just have to copy and paste and send you, Jenny, but I also got it from the National Resource Center on Supported Decision Making, is looking with your child and working on, thinking about a specific decision and looking at the impact it could have, and looking at these questions. So say there's a decision on the table of, do I start looking for a job? So you're looking at what kind of decision is being made. Well, it's about employment. Have I made this decision before? We all kind of use different supports when it's a brand new decision that we've never made versus one we've done before. So I have now purchased a home 3 times. This last third time, I asked a lot fewer questions, went to a lot fewer people for help than that first time, because I'd kind of been through it and I kind of knew some of the questions to ask and not ask, the importance of the inspection versus the appraisal. So, what is it? And do I have the supports to understand the risk and benefits? Do I have those people I can ask or not? And then it goes on of how big of an impact could this have? Kind of like, can it be undone? How long will I live with the decision? Is it hard to undo? And what's the least restrictive level of support? And so based on some of these answers, then the support changes, and then maybe the also changes of who gets to help or who makes the decision. Because it may come down to how big is the impact of the decision on my life? Very, very, very large, and maybe one I don't feel able to do. And so then helping your youth figure out who or how they could come to making that decision, or if they need support in having someone else make it, and then looking at what needs to be in place for that. Sorry, my throat's getting dry. Another one, again, I'm not an attorney, but is helpful because if you're going back and forth between do I need guardianship, could support decision-making work, this is a tool for attorneys because here in Oregon, the statute for guardianship states, and you have to say if you're petitioning to become guardian, what less restrictive alternatives you've looked into. So you have to state if you've looked into supported decision making, if you've looked into power of attorney, representative payee, the other alternatives that are available, and state why those alternatives will not work for your youth. So this is a tool specifically for attorneys, but as parents can help us know what the attorney's looking at and help us really objectively look at the support our youth may need. And so this is available from the American Bar Association. Jenny, I've got the link, I can send it to you. But each letter of practical stands for a different aspect of evaluating if guardianship is needed or if a less restrictive alternative could happen, which one is supported decision making. So like under P, you presume at start that guardianship's not needed. Let's look and see if there's another support that could work. And I'm not going to go through all of the letters. But reason, I talk about this sometimes in my alternative to guardianship of what is the reason there's concern. So clearly identifying the reasons there's concern and the reason someone is going to need support with decision making, and determining is that reason short term, which for most of us it's not. Our child has had disability since birth, or sometime in their childhood, and is going to continue. But looking at what are those reasons? Because until you identify those reasons, or sometimes when I talk more about alternatives, it's a fear for us as parents. We want to protect and keep our kids safe. And so it's a fear of what happens if the wrong decision is made. So addressing, because you can't address them until you identify them. And then one of the other ones in I is identify the abilities, identify the strengths and limitations in decision making. So if you go back up, like the stop, look, and listen tool helped you identify their strengths and where they had skill, and limitations where they didn't. So this is a good one to just review and look through, and it gets you thinking about what does that really look like going forth, and it gives you kind of the perspective that an attorney will have if you go and chat with them about petitioning for guardianship, if that's the support your child needs. All right, so we've kind of looked at all this stuff, talked about those building blocks, talked about concepts in decision making, and one of the key ingredients and important parts in supported decision making is getting it somehow written down on paper to reflect what supports it is your youth wants to use, who they want, and how they want those decisions to be made. So this is from Helen Sanderson's and Associates, some very basic decision-making profile or agreement. And if you look at the profile, you can see some of the building blocks we've already talked about. How I like to get information. How do I want it put in? What helps me? How to present the choices to me. Am I a yes, no? Am I a talk it out? Ways you can help me understand. When is the best time to help me make decision? That goes back to our environmental settings. When's a bad time to help me make a decision? And the other one, important decisions in my life. So what are those important decisions? How must I be involved? And on this one, I don't quite like the who makes the final decision, because in supported decision making, it is the person. So usually when I see this one used, it has the person's name, Emily, 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 all the way down, which I guess then could help reiterate that it is Emily. I also I'm going to try to share my screen a different way. I have an example I want to show you of a very specific supported decision-making agreement around healthcare. So please bear with me. It doesn't work to embed it, so I'm going to have to go out really quick.
Emily, have you, if you unshare your screen and then you get ready to share your screen, there's a box to optimize the video.
Uh-huh.
Probably want to click that box so that we can hear it.
Okay. Screen to optimize. Well, there's no video. It's just me talking still. But all right, share. It doesn't have the green box around it. Do you see making my own healthcare decisions?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Normally it has a green box around it on my screen, so I know what is being shared. So this is from the ARC of the United States. They have a full Center for Future Planning, and they've written up this making my own healthcare decisions for people with disabilities. And it is and can be used as a supported decision-making document. So I just want to point out the building blocks we've talked about and how they're addressed and written out in an agreement. So if I scroll down, and I know scrolling is hard when you're watching, and so I'll try and stop, but if you see here, this letter can be used as a supported decision-making agreement. And then if we start and getting to the agreement. So it's a letter to the doctors, and it says at the beginning, if you read the instructions, it says anything that's crossed off in this 1 through 12 means it's not how to support me. So this gives you one that's already done that you can customize to you, or you could retype it up. But sometimes I need help making decisions. Doesn't mean I can't make my own. And identifies the different ways that someone could possibly get support for these decisions. So, sometimes the supporter will come to the appointment, but the reminder to please talk to the person, not the supporter. If you go down to 3 or 4, ask me if I have questions. Give me important information in writing. I can't see the bottom of my screen, so I'm getting up. My supporter may help me tell you what my decision is. Give me time to talk to my supporter if I want it. So identifying some of those ways the supporter is going to participate in this. It also lets the doctor know, again, how the doctor could tell if you're upset, worried, or confused, because that's important for the doctor to understand how you're processing that information and, how to move forth. So they've got that information and can have it. If I seem upset or worried, how the doctor can support you and provide more information. And then it goes down here and it identifies the 2 people or 1, however many. But, here who my supporter is. It's my mom. Here's her contact. And then how that supporter is going to help me. So this supporter can help me make doctor's appointments. Yes. Can talk to the doctor if I'm not there. Yes or no. And identifies some of those. And it also has how this supporter or what this supporter cannot do. Maybe there's some things that you don't want that supporter to do that isn't listed up above here. So can write those out also. And then it goes to this, if you have a second supporter, this one does, all states are different in terms of healthcare power of attorneys. In Oregon, that's usually the advanced directives. So this could be a part if you wanted to use it to cross out, or would then be the advanced directives. And then relaying that the person has understood or understands this letter, and you sign it. And then the supporter, a key part I forgot back in supporters, is the supporter has to agree to help. So I can't decide I want somebody to help me who doesn't want to help me. They have to agree. So here on this one, it is identifying, yes, I as the supporter am willing to help this person with their medical choices and decisions and getting them the information they need. So that is, and I can give that to Jenny to send out. That's just one example of how this can get written up and what it can look like in a format that you can provide to a medical professional, or if it's a decision about where to live or employment or finances, they can take slightly different forms, but it's showing just kind of how those pieces come together. Now I'm going to quickly go back to, oh, I didn't do this right. 1, 2, 3 there. Okay. I'm almost there. All right. So since we looked at that one agreement, also going to say kind of what parts of those building blocks are used to make up a supported decision-making agreement when you're getting it in writing. So those key components to have in that agreement are who is the person, and who are the supporters, clearly identifying who those people are. The what is on what topic are these people going to provide help? So if I've identified Emily as the person and my supporter is Kathleen, under what I'm going to put medical decisions because she's my stepmom who knows medical stuff. Then going to identify when do I want this help from her? When I reach out, when I get a new diagnosis, anytime I'm going to the doctor, maybe if I need more help. Kind of like the one we just looked at too of, can she help me make appointments? Can she talk to my doctor? So identifying that when I'm getting the support and the how. How am I getting that support? How is Kathleen going to help me? Is she going to provide me with written documents and websites? Is she going to provide me with verbal information, a video? And then again, part of that how is she going to be coming to the appointments with me? Or is she going to be on the phone when I'm at appointments? Do I talk with her after? How do I need support from her? Then I have to have agreement. I have to be like, yes, I want her to help me. And she has to be like, yes, I want to help Emily. And then you can, but not required, is you can have it witnessed or notary. There are some supported decision-making agreement examples that have a place for witnesses and notary on them. But those are kind of those basics. It's taking all those little pieces we've talked about, who the supporter is, how I get the information, that environment that works best for me, how I take in that information. What does it look like that I need those visits, or I need that visual help, or I need to ask 100 questions to get mine. But it's taking that and getting it then down in writing so that it can be used and shown to someone of, this is how I make decisions, this is how I get support, and the decisions are still mine. One thing to talk about, because people usually ask, is, well, is decision-making legal in Oregon? Yes, it's legal. If you think about it, it's how many of us make decisions every day, and it's never questioned. It is, however, in Oregon currently not protected by statute as, so if a support decision-making agreement comes into question, there's not protected by statute so that you can kind of force like a doctor to listen to it. So that is one limitation of it currently, is if, you're supporting your young adult child with a medical need and you have a support decision-making agreement and you've showed it to the doctor and said, this is how my child makes decision, or if your child does, this is everything we've done and thought put into this decision. Currently, a doctor can still go, I don't trust this, and I don't think they can give informed decision consent. And then you're kind of stuck and have to look for something else. We have seen it work, though, that when you can produce that document and say, this is what went into it, this is how they process information, this is, and all these steps you've taken, that shows the professional, oh, there's more to this than I thought. It wasn't just, hey, do you want to have your wisdom teeth out? Yes. There was thought and consideration there. There is currently, right now, a bill at the Oregon legislature regarding supported decision making, that is about making sure parents are informed about it. And I know in the state of Oregon, we continue to work to get full statute protection behind it. So just wanted to make sure people were aware of that piece. But it is a process that is up and working in Oregon. I know multiple people who have and do use supported decision making for decisions about their life and have it honored throughout the state. All right. Jenny, have you been collecting questions? And while I answer questions or Jenny gets ready, this is my contact information. Feel free to email me, to call me. And I hope you have found this information useful.
Okay, we have someone that had asked in the question and answer section, and I wasn't quite sure which tool they were looking at to see if it was downloadable. Laurie has to leave. She's got another appointment. So,
okay. Here, I'll do stop. Oh, wait, I shouldn't have stopped sharing. People
so
might
Laurie
be
was the one that was asking about that. So I will send out an email with all of the tools that we've talked about, if we have links or we have the PDF for it. And Emily, will you be able to make the slide deck available for them?
Yes, I can transition that into a PDF and send it to you.
Okay, that'd be awesome. And I can send that out as well. Anybody have any other questions? I don't see any raised hands. I don't see questions in the chat or the Q&A. Well, Emily, that was awesome information. And even though I've heard it before, it's good to hear it again. It's a good reminder. I feel like this is something that we practice with Christian all the time. And also with my aging parents. So it's good information to have.
It is useful across the board. There's lots of places it can be used.
Okay, looks like we have another question. Why am I not seeing it? Thank you, Emily and Jenny. Great information. That was Jennifer. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. I love sharing. I love making sure, and I love the choice for the name of this series of Informed Choice, because I feel many times parents don't always get all the information they need and aren't necessarily making an informed choice when they make some decisions for their kiddos. So awesome that y'all are putting focus there, and parents can get the info they need to make that informed choice.
Well, I appreciate you talking about that shift from when you're raising a child that is under 18 to when your child is over 18, because it definitely was a big shift for us as parents.
I can only imagine it so far, because mine are currently 13 and 14, but I know it's coming. And I know I can't imagine it'll be easy, because we as parents just want to protect our kids.
Yep. Thanks, Morgan, for joining us. I appreciate it. Morgan has to head out. She has another appointment. So I think at that point, we're going to close. I'm going to stop the recording.